Race condition. Memory vulnerability associated with multi-thread applications. DLL injection. An attack where a piece of malware inserts a piece of code into a dynamic link library. Pointer dereferencing. Changes the target memory location of a pointer. Resource exhaustion. Occurs when a system runs out of limited resources such as bandwidth, RAM, or hard drive space. Botnet. Formed when a malicious program is installed on several host computers and is remotely triggered. Trapdoor. An unreported method for entering a program typically created to debug a program. Virus. A program that copies itself to files on a computer. Worm. A program that spreads itself through network connections. Passive scan. Impacts the host and network less than other scan types. Active scan. Performs a more in-depth analysis than other scan types. Credentialed scan. Includes the appropriate permissions for the different data types. Agent-based scan. Limiting a scan to a particular operating system, agents are installed on devices. Shoulder surfing. Watching someone when they enter sensitive data. Tailgating. Following someone through a door they just unlocked. Vishing. A special type of phishing that uses VoIP. Whaling. A special type of phishing that targets a single power user. Dumpster diving. When attackers go through the contents of your organization's dumpster in hopes of finding confidential information. Adware. A software application that displays advertisements while the application is executing. Root. A collection of programs that grants a hacker administrative access to a computer or network. Worm. A program that spreads itself through network connections. Piggybacking. Gaining access to the data center by using another user's credentials is an example of what? Man-trap. A set of double doors generally monitored by a security guard. Turnstile. Type of gate that allows movement in a single direction at a time. Intrusion. Generic term used for any type of security breach. Escalation of privileges. When an attacker uses a design flaw in an application to obtain unauthorized access to the application. Backdoor. Lines of code inserted into an application allow developers to enter the application and bypass security mechanisms. Buffer overflow. Occurs when an application erroneously allows an invalid amount of input in the buffer. Untrained users. What is often the weakest link in the security chain and represents the largest vulnerability. Social engineering. A hacker has called a company employee and learned the employee's username and password by posing as a member of corporate technical support. Which type of attack has occurred? Denial of service. When a hacker floods a network with requests so that legitimate users cannot gain access to resources on a computer or a network. Brute force attack. When a hacker tries all possible values for such variables as usernames and passwords. Brute force attack. Using a program to guess passwords from a SAM file is an example of what kind of attack? Script kiddies. A threat actor who can be characterized by having an unsophisticated skill level, using widely available tools, and being often motivated by the need that they can prove they can do it or what? Treason. As the security administrator for your company, you are primarily concerned with protecting corporate assets. Currently, you are working to ensure confidentiality for corporate data, which activity is not covered under this objective. URL hijacking. An attack that relies on mistakes made by users when they input web addresses. Malicious insider threat. When legitimate users take advantage of the valid access they have to resources to carry out an attack against an organization. Watering hole attack. When an attacker profiles victims to discover the sites they visit. Advanced persistent threat. A group of individuals from an enemy country attempts to breach the company network using sophisticated and targeted attacks. Spear phishing. An email spoofing attack appears to come from a figure of authority seeking access to confidential data. Armored virus. A virus that includes protective code that prevents outside examination of critical elements. Companion virus. Attaches to legitimate programs and creates a program with a different file extension. Phage virus. Modifies other programs and databases. Stealth virus. Prevents detection by hiding from applications. Zero-day exploit. An attack that exploits a security vulnerability on the day the vulnerability becomes generally known. Smurf Attack. An attack where a paying request is sent to a broadcast network address with the aim of overwhelming the system. Replay Attack. An attack where an intruder records between a user and a server and later plays the recorded information back to impersonate the user. When recent scope changes have been made to the DHCP server when the result of running ipconfig/all commands indicates a 169.254.163.6 address, you instruct a user to issue the ipconfig command with the /release and /renew options. In which two situations would it be appropriate to ask a user to do this? Embedded firewall. A firewall that is integrated into a router. Software firewall. A firewall installed on a server operating system such as Windows Server 2008 or Linux. Hardware firewall. A firewall with a black box device which is designed to be deployed on a network with minimum configuration and installation effort. Application firewall. A firewall designed to filter traffic at application layer of OSI model component to hardware firewall. And NIDS analyzes encrypted information. What is not a characteristic of a network-based intrusion detection system device? It has a fixed number of available interfaces. What is a disadvantage of a hardware firewall compared to a software firewall? HTTPS. Secure web access. Secure NTP. Secure time synchronization. Secure POP3. Secure email download. DNSSEC. Secure domain name resolution. DHCP. Network address allocation. It is low maintenance. What is the primary advantage of using a NIDS device? CRL. CA. Generates and validates digital certificates. Key Distribution Center. Kerberos network authentication to distribute resource access keys. User Datagram Protocol. Provides connectionless communications on TCP/IP networks. Omni. A multi-directional antenna that radiates radio wave power uniformly in all directions in one plane with a radiation pattern shaped like a donut. Yagi. A directional antenna with high gain and narrow radiation pattern. Sector. A directional antenna with a circle measured in degrees of arc radiation pattern. Dipole. Earliest, simplest and most widely used antenna with radiation pattern shaped like a donut. PPTPL2TP. Your company has decided to implement a virtual private network which will be used by remote employees to access internal network resources. Which two protocols could you use? Proxy server. Management wants to install an internet gateway, firewall, and internet caching server on a new private network. You would prefer that a single device be installed to provide these service. Which network device should you install? Hardware firewall. Also referred to as an appliance firewall. G-tagging. Management is concerned that mobile device location information can be revealed to attackers. Which mobile device feature should you investigate? Packet filtering firewall. You have been asked to install a new firewall that only examines the packet header information. Which type of firewall are you installing? Stateful firewall. Examines all layers of packet to compile information for the state table. Kernel proxy firewall. Examines every layer of the packet, including the data payload. Application level proxy firewall. Examines entire packet. Protocol analyzer. Your manager suspects your network is under attack. You've been asked to provide information regarding traffic flow and statistical information for your network. Which tool should you use? Port scanner. Provides list of open ports and services on your network. Penetration test. Determines if network security is properly configured to rebuff hacker attacks. Vulnerability test. Checks network for known vulnerabilities and provides methods for protection against the vulnerabilities. Web application firewall. Management wants to protect all traffic on the company's HTTPS server. You've been asked to recommend a solution. Which device is the best solution? Application level proxy firewall. Which type of firewall is most detrimental to network performance? File integrity checks. Your organization reads a system that logs changes to files. What category of solution should you research? NACL. Recently, an IT admin contacted you regarding a file server. Currently, all users are granted access to all the files on this server. You've been asked to change the configuration and designate which users can access the files. What should you use to do this? Network. You need to install and configure a new router on your company's network. At which layer of the OSI model will it operate? VPN concentrators. You're designing a network. In addition to placing devices in a peripheral network, you need to place security devices in several key departments. Which of the following could not be placed wherever they are needed in the network? Remote access. Allows geographically dispersed users to access the intranet or other company resources. Screen filters. You have a highly mobile workforce, and they often work in airplanes, airports, and other public places. Management is concerned that unauthorized users can obtain information when personnel are using the devices in public places. What could be implemented to help mitigate risk? By using sandboxes. How does an unsigned Java applet enforce security in JDK 1.1? Object code. Version of computer program that is compiled before it is ready to run in a computer. Macro languages. Used in microprograms to automate common tasks and activities of application users. Digital and trusted certificates. Used by Microsoft's ActiveX technology to enforce security. General purpose guides only. What type of documentation includes rules for ISO compliance, adhering to NIST guidelines, and conforming to PCI DSS and other standards? Sandboxing air gap. How can you keep the production network safe from vulnerabilities that may be caused by a failed test in the R&D department? Faraday cage. Security measure that prevents eavesdropping or signals leaving the room. Tokens and cards. Items a user must possess in order to gain access to the building, room, or network resource. Real-time operating systems. What is particularly dangerous because it processes data with little or no latency? Home automation. Devices such as smart thermostats, lighting systems, and fridges are susceptible to security issues. Wearable technology. Are a risk because most transmit via Wi-Fi or Bluetooth to a host device. System on a chip. Often found in smartphones. VM sprawl avoidance. Your organization has discovered the cost savings associated with virtual machines and is encouraging rapid adoption. Which concept should you implement before things get out of control? Error handling. Which secure coding technique ensures that improper data is not allowed into the executed program? Stored procedures. a series of SQL statements that are executed as a group and are similar to scripts. Encryption should be used in software development as well as network traffic to protect data being stored or transmitted. Provisioning. Allocate resources based on demand for those resources. Aggregate switches. You are incorporating a perimeter network into a network redesign and are adding several new devices to enhance security. What would not be best placed in the new perimeter network? DDoS mitigator should be placed on the perimeter network so that it can detect and mitigate a DDoS attack. Proxies best suited for placement in perimeter network. VPN concentrators should be placed in perimeter network near the gateway. ESC, which process allows you to deploy, configure, and manage data centers through scripts. Secure boot and attestation. You want to ensure that your systems are protected against roots and boot sector viruses. Which security option would be the most effective? Radius. You need to allow remote access users to log on to a network through a shared authentication database. Which of the following should you deploy? Data encryption standard. Private key encryption standard that can be used to encrypt files. Internet Protocol security. Can be used to digitally sign and encrypt Internet Protocol packets. Data control language implements security through access control and granular restrictions. Your company implements several databases. You are concerned with the security of the data in the databases. Which statement is correct for database security? A computer, a file, a printer. Under mandatory access control, what entities would exist as an object? User identification with reusable passwords. The most common forms of identification and authentication are what? Mandatory access control. Your organization has been awarded a federal government contract. You have been instructed to set up a server with an OS that will enforce the access control rules required by the federal government. Which access control method will be implemented? Use group policies. You need to enforce several security settings for all of the computers on your Windows network in as efficient manner as possible. What should you do? Data owner. You have been hired as a security consultant for a real estate agency. The company currently implements discretionary access control on its network. Who is primarily responsible for determining access control using this access control method? Active Directory Kerberos Sesame. Which technologies provide single sign-on authentication? Mutual authentication. Which authentication method checks the identity of both ends of the connection? Two-phase commit. You have implemented the 3 databases that your organization uses to ensure that an entire transaction must be executed to ensure data integrity. If a portion of a transaction cannot complete, the entire transaction is not performed. Which database security mechanism are you using? CHAP. You need to implement a protocol for dial-up connections that uses a challenge response mechanism. Which protocol should you use? Client computers, server computers, domain controllers, users. Your company has a Windows Active Directory domain that uses group policies to manage security settings. Which entities can group policies be used to manage? Change management. Which principle states that multiple changes to a computer system should not be made at the same time? Due diligence. The investigation of a business, person, or act prior to signing a contract or committing the act. Due care. Normal care that a reasonable entity would exercise over that entity's property. Acceptable use. Employee or customer usage of company resources that is allowed and defined in a contractually binding document. All employees must understand their security responsibilities. As part of a new security initiative, your organization has decided that all employees must undergo security awareness training. What is the aim of this training? Disaster recovery plan. Which element is created to ensure that your company is able to resume operation after unplanned downtime in a timely manner? Labeling. Which operation must you undertake to avoid mishandling of tapes, CDs, DVDs, and printed material? Fault tolerance. Classification of information. What is typically part of an information policy? Separation of duties. What concept is being illustrated when user accounts are created by one employee and user permissions are configured by another employee? Lessons learned. During which step of incident response does root cause analysis occur? Acceptance. You are the security administrator for your company. You identify a security risk. You decide to continue with the current security plan. However, you develop a contingency plan for if the security risk occurs. Which type of risk response strategy are you demonstrating? Avoidance. Modifying the security plan to eliminate the risk or its impact. Transference. Transferring the risk and its consequences to a third part. Mitigation. Reducing the probability or impact of a risk to an acceptance risk threshold. Accreditation. Which stage is not a part of the life cycle of evidence? Natural disaster hardware failure. Which events should be considered as part of the business continuity plan? An information policy. Which policy defines the sensitivity of a company's data? Cache RAM running processes hard drive backup media. What is the correct order in which forensic analysis should occur? CMIC. Your company has decided to implement ISEC on all VPN connections to provide better security. You need to ensure that packets are digitally signed on ISEC connections. What provides this in ISEC? DER. You need to export your Windows Server certificate file. What is the default file extension for the export file? PEM. Your client is migrating from an Apache-based server to a Windows server, which X509 certificate file extension is not going to be compatible with the new server. BitLocker to go. You need to ensure that USB flash drives issued by your organization are protected by encryption. What should you implement? Encrypting file system. Used to encrypt individual files, not drives. Data encryption standard and advanced encryption standard. Cryptographic algorithms used to confidentially transmit data. RC4. You are currently comparing stream ciphers and block ciphers. You have decided to use only block ciphers and hash algorithms on your organization's network. Which cryptographic algorithm is a stream cipher? RC5 and RC6. Block ciphers. MD5. A one-way hashing algorithm. Message integrity. You have recently been hired as a security administrator for a company. In the security documentation, it mentions that message authentication code is implemented. What does this ensure? Authentication integrity non-repudiation. Your company has recently adopted a new security policy that states all confidential emails must be signed using a digital signature. Which three elements are provided by implementation of this technology? SHA. Your company needs to protect message integrity. Management decides that you need to implement an algorithm that uses 160-bit checksums. Which algorithm should you implement? AES. Uses 128-bit, 192-bit, and 256-bit encryption keys. MD5. Produces 128-bit checksums. DES. Uses 56-bit encryption keys. Web. Recently, several confidential files from your company have been intercepted. Your company decides to implement PGP to encrypt files. Which type of model does this encryption use? SKIP is a key distribution protocol. Which statement is true of SKIP? DER. The client specifications dictate that you use a base 64 ASCII encoded certificate, which certificate type would not be acceptable. P12, P7B, and PFX. All base 64 ASCII encoded certificates. SHA-1. You need to ensure that several confidential files are not changed. You decide to use an algorithm to create message digests for confidential files. Which algorithm should you use? Wi-Fi protected access. You are creating a wireless network for your company. You need to implement a wireless protocol that provides maximum security while providing support for older wireless clients. Which protocol should you use?